Hello, welcome everybody to Holidays and Caregiving. My name is Xochitl Martinac. I'm here with Lisa's Care Connection. Again, thank you everybody for joining. And we have Savannah Levine here, Program and Education Manager for Alzheimer's Association. And she's here to present our presenter for today.
Thank you very much, Sochi. Yes, I'm really happy to be here today. We partner very closely with Lisa's Care Connection here at the association. And so today we have a presentation called Caregiving and Planning for the Holidays. We really only present this topic during the holiday season, so it is, of course, unique to this time. And we have Mike Douglas, who is a community educator of ours, here to present this topic today. We're going to save Q&A for the end of the presentation. So that means you can put in your questions into the chat Q&A function, but we won't address them till the end. Or of course you can come, unmute yourself at the very end and ask us those questions. So please save those questions till the end, and I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Savannah. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Douglas, and as Savannah told you, I'm a community educator, volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association. I've been volunteering with the association for I think about a year now. Alzheimer's Association, dementia has touched my life in that, my mother was diagnosed with vascular dementia about 10 years ago. And so that's when my journey along with my mother started. And since then, she and I have worked together to make sure that she stays safe and active and healthy. And she lives in a memory care community currently, and she's doing, very well. But, like a lot of families, particularly around the holidays, we deal with some of the issues that come up during holiday seasons. And so this presentation offers some tips to help deal with the holiday season, which can be stressful in and of itself. But then when you add, the caregiver aspect for a loved one with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, things can get much more difficult. So hopefully when we're done, you'll have some tips and tools to help you navigate the holiday season. So in terms of the learning objectives, we want to make sure that you can identify the reality of caregiving during the holiday season, which is very different than normally. We want to discuss strategies to prepare and plan for the holidays, and we want to help you with some tips to help you get through the season and have a great holiday season. Because as we all know, even without dementia in the picture, with some of our families, we need tips to get through it all, with or without dementia, complicating things. So, why are holidays so difficult sometimes? This picture is kind of the classic picture of what the holiday is supposed to be. A perfectly cooked meal, smiling, well manicured people, a perfectly placed table, the whole thing. But when you have dementia in the picture, things get more complicated. For example, can you count on having enough time to cook that beautiful turkey to perfection? Or, to make the holiday pies that you are accustomed to making? Can you entertain the same number of guests that you used to? Can you prepare your home the same way that you used to, before the dementia diagnosis? And how about your loved one? Is your loved one coping well with the holiday and the changed circumstances and what have you? Is there too much activity going on in your home? So, holidays can already be stressful in and of themselves, but they can certainly be more stressful when you're dealing with a loved one with dementia. Now, from the caregiver's perspective, you really can have a roller coaster of emotions. It upsets your normal routine. Maybe there are children that are on vacation, for example. Stores that you used to be able to go to are closed or unusually busy. Uh, you're more distracted because of all the holiday hustle and bustle, which means that you have less time to, to undertake your usual caregiving obligations. And so that can lead to you feeling overwhelmed. It can also lead to some feelings of guilt, which aren't fair to you, but it happens. And all of that can lead to a caregiver getting overstressed, overworked, overwhelmed, and getting less rest. Our loved ones are also having a parallel series of emotions. Again, because the caregiver that they are usually counting on is less attentive. There's oftentimes more activity and noise in the house. For example, you've got, decorations and the environment looks different, blinking lights and candles and artificial fruits that look like real food. There are maybe electrical cords and piles of gifts and things that weren't there before. A loved one can be taken out of their normal routine, which provides a certain level of security and comfort for them. So that creates problems. And all of that can also lead to a loved one getting less sleep, which means that they're going to be less effective and more prone to having problems that are occasioned by their condition and the added stress. So loved ones can be negatively impacted by the hustle and bustle of the holidays as well. So what do? We should prepare for the holidays. Now, holidays can be, very meaningful, very enriching times. Um, and it's a time when you can maintain and adapt to new traditions to help everybody feel like they belong, to enhance and the family identity. The key will be when you have a person who is experiencing progressive dementia will be, can we make new traditions? Because when it comes down to it, what's really most important um, isn't whether or not you cooked the perfect meal or the fine china is set out perfectly and you've got this perfectly prepared 5-course dinner. The key is that everyone gets to spend time together and, your loved one gets a happy, healthy, safe holiday experience. So that means that, that you may have to think of new ways to carry out, traditions. Now, before you make your plans, you want to think about, what do you really want to achieve from your holiday activities and interactions? For example, as I said, maybe you've had these fantastic dinners before, but maybe that's not a reality anymore. Or maybe you had, large groups of people that came to your, holiday parties before. But maybe now, based on your loved one's current abilities, maybe that's not the best thing anymore for either, you as a caregiver or your loved one. So the key is that, it's important to go ahead and prepare to, adjust. The holidays can be just as meaningful with new traditions or new variations on old traditions. It's just a matter of giving yourself permission to experiment and deviate from old traditions. How do you do that? Yeah. Set a game plan. Remember, you don't have to live up to the expectations of friends and family, um, you know, as to what your holiday should look like. For example, if someone is complaining about you not cooking that 5-course meal that you usually do, um, there's no need to get upset with them, because a lot of people don't understand what dealing with life as a caregiver for someone with dementia is. People just don't understand if they're not living it. So, um, that might be an opportunity to educate them about what's going on and why you've deviated from what you've previously done. And maybe that's an opportunity to even invite them to help. So, for example, if someone is thinking about that 5-course meal that you used to have, you might invite them to co-host or to host, um, and to help give you a break. So there are ways to deal with it, by educating folks. But the key is, set your limits and stick to them. And remember that, your abilities to do things the way you always have done them before will be limited. And so it's important to give yourself some grace, set your limits, and stick to them. If you need help from family members or what have you, then it's perfectly fine to bring them in and educate them about what's going on. And you want to also try to avoid situations that are going to further confuse or frustrate your loved one. So, um, for example, uh, new locations, big events at new locations with unfamiliar people, that might be difficult for a loved one to deal with. So you want to think about that as you're making your holiday plans. And you want to schedule activities early so you can avoid fatigue. One of the things that I've noticed with my mother is that she is great in the early afternoon uh, into the early evening, but in the very early evening, and I mean like by 5:30 or 6, she starts to wear down. And so I know that when I'm picking her up and we're going to a family event, I know that it's better to pick her up earlier in the day, let her enjoy herself throughout the afternoon, but that for the most part, pretty soon after an early dinner, she's going to be ready to head home. And so that's an adjustment that we've had to make. And the other thing is you want to make sure that you're clear with other people as to what's going on. As I said, you're not able to maybe make that 5-course dinner anymore. So you should make sure that people that are attending the family gathering know that. And so that, people are given an opportunity to participate and assist or make whatever arrangements they'd like to make. Another thing that's important is you might consider involving your loved one. People want to feel involved and useful, no matter what stage they're in. And, it's important to give opportunities to people with these cognitive problems to participate. And we want to honor their ability to assist and their dignity. So, it's important to try to involve them. For example, something that a loved one might do that might be simple might be folding napkins, for example, or helping to set a table. Something that's fairly straightforward, basic, simple, but they get to participate. But remember, taking on too many tasks at one time can wear on you and your loved one. So remember, you want to be mindful of their abilities, and you always want to be mindful of what you are going to be able to do as well. Because remember, if you're caregiving, it's difficult to be, the world's best host at the same time. Remember, just because something has always been done a certain way, it doesn't mean that it has to be done that way in perpetuity. Remember, give yourself an opportunity to adjust and be flexible. And importantly, you want to make sure that your loved one stays as close to their normal routine as possible so that preparations don't become disruptive or confusing. I remember in years past, for example, and some people on here may remember this as well, that you know Thanksgiving would come and my mother would stay up all night essentially, making turkey, checking the turkey, periodically through the night. And that's not something that, that she can do anymore. And it isn't something that she should be a party to doing anymore. Um, her routine starts in the morning and then it ends in the early evening. And so when it comes time for holiday visits, we pretty much stay within that same normal routine to keep her on her schedule and to keep her from getting confused. So that's important to do as well. So, there are other things that a loved one can do, during these holiday gatherings and during preparation even. If activities that are going on with the family are too much, a loved one can, uh, you know, go off to another room with somebody else, maybe watch movies or play or listen to music, um, baking cookies or other baking activities can be fun. The key is to focus on your loved one's strengths when you're figuring out what might be a good way to involve um, your loved one in either the preparation or in the holiday activities. And sometimes, just being in the same room, with you, while you're doing your holiday preparations can be enjoyable. And just having a conversation or just being there um, and watching you do what you do. And again, if things are too hectic, you can always involve a friend or a family member to help sort of pull the loved one into a quieter place and do something more quiet and restful, if all the activities and the hustle and bustle of the family and preparations is too much. Safety is important because remember, somebody with cognitive problems or cognitive issues um, don't always catch things. So there are hazards that might be um, not as hazardous to people without dementia, but with dementia patients and family members, it could be more difficult. So, for example, lit candles can be a problem. Decorations that are breakable or that look like food can be difficult, or going to places with large crowds and unfamiliar people. Those can all be difficult and dangerous environments for people with dementia. So you want to keep that in mind. Something else you might want to consider is to prepare your guests, um, for what they might encounter in dealing with a loved one that has cognitive losses. Uh, it's important to have these conversations with your guests who maybe haven't seen your loved one for a long time, and they might be caught off guard by the change in their demeanor or their level of function, given the last time that they saw that person. So for example, I remember, um, I think it's last Christmas, one of my mother's closest friends from high school uh, called her out of the blue. She got through to my phone because she wasn't able to reach my mother. And I knew exactly who she was. But when I put her on the phone with my mother, she couldn't remember her. And this is somebody that she basically grew up with in the 50s and 60s. They were friends all through the 70s as grown women into the 80s. I mean, they were just inseparable. But it's been too long since they last spoke, and without any visual cues, my mother just wasn't able to remember. So, I had to explain to the friend that, that was the case. And obviously, the friend understood, and people do understand, but they need to be assisted with that. So, for example, you might help guide conversations either away from things or to things. So when my mother first moved out of her home into a memory care community, um, I had to tell family members not to mention, um, her house and what we used to do when we would all go to my mother's house, because it was a touchy subject at the time. It would upset my mother. So things like that. It's just a matter of helping to educate guests, with little hints so that they can know what to do and know what to say to make themselves feel more comfortable and to make your loved one feel more comfortable. And it's been my experience that people are very receptive to that and very appreciative. Now, it's important to encourage family and friends to visit, because those moments can be very enjoyable for your loved one. And it's important to remember that even though, Alzheimer's and other dementias make it difficult for people to remember things, um, it's important to stress the importance of living in the moment. And we don't focus on the things that the person either does or does not remember. So, for example, if I happen to tell a story to my mom about something that happened in the past, the way I might say it is like, "Oh, mom, do you remember my friend Joe? He came by your house, several times for the holidays." And if she says, "No, I don't think I remember Joe," I'll just say, "Oh, okay. Well, I understand that. It's been a long time since you've last seen him," and I'll just kind of go on to whatever point I was making. But we don't focus on the things that are lost and the things that they can't remember. Try to prod those memories if they're just not there, because all that'll do is frustrate and agitate them. And they're living in the moment, and so we should too. All right, so when your guests arrive, remember, most individuals with moderate dementia can do pretty well for brief periods of time. So, as I was saying earlier, it's important to allow for opportunities for your loved one to get quiet moments if they need it, in separate rooms if that's what they require, and allow for some, private rest if they just need to take a nap or sit quietly by themselves, whatever it is. Um, and again, these tips will vary based on your loved one's level of function. So, but depending on their level of function, you'll want to keep the number of people visiting, at one time to a minimum. Again, whatever, that'll depend on your family structure and the kind of family gatherings you have and your loved one's level of function, what that number of people will be. Um, and you might try a few individuals visiting quietly with the individual in a separate room if that's something that your loved one requires. That isn't something, for example, that my mother requires. She would not want to be sitting in a room quietly by herself. She'd much rather be around the family. Even though she doesn't say a lot these days, she's listening to everything and completely enjoying herself. But that's her level of function, and that's how she uh, does best. So your loved one will, and their level of function will dictate, uh, how you want to apply this. Flexibility is another thing that's important. And, you might consider, if big dinners don't work anymore because your family dinners historically later in the evening and your loved one does better earlier in the day, you might think about having lunches or brunches to celebrate. You know, again, with my mother, it's not a holiday thing, but for her birthday, we used to, I'd always take her out to dinner, or we'd have a family dinner. Now, for her birthday, it's usually lunch or brunch because she does better earlier in the day. So, we just have adjusted how we do that, and it's just as enjoyable. Um, you know, Arranging for in-home care so you can enjoy time with a friend. This is important because, you've got to recharge your own batteries. Caring for someone with dementia is difficult, and it's tiring, and it could be exhausting. And so sometimes it's important to make sure, particularly during the holidays, that you give yourself a break. So if you can arrange for in-home care so you can enjoy a little time with a friend, that can be an important way for you to recharge yourself and be ready to come back in and be your best self for your loved one. Something else you might consider is have your family holiday meal at a restaurant or getting takeout. This is something that my family has also done. I think last Thanksgiving, um, you know, the the kids in the family, uh, I'll say the kids because all of those kids are now in their 50s and 60s, but we used to be the kids, uh, and all of the kids, uh, we all chipped in and we had a caterer cater our dinner, and it wasn't expensive. It was a small catering business, and and she was able to provide a great meal for everybody, and it didn't cost us a lot because we all pooled our funds. So that was a way that we were able to take the load of all the cooking off of the generation that was just before us. Most of them aren't able to get around in the kitchen as they used to. Certainly, my mother can't. But that's a new tradition that we just started. So there are other ways to to have a great meal with the family that that doesn't involve maybe one person, a caregiver now slaving over a hot stove all day. So remember, the key is that holidays are an opportunity to share love, with our family, and it's not about the best meal and the best decorations and all the things that go along with the holidays that stress us all out. It's important to kind of remember that. If you're traveling, um, you know, there's some things to think about. Plan ahead. Um, Holiday travel can be a real mess with traffic and crowded airports and all sorts of things. So you want to think about bathroom breaks and what happens when your loved one is faced with distracting activities and all the things that go on in an airport, on buses or just long car rides, all kinds of things that you have to consider. So just plan ahead as to what you're going to need. Keep the plan simple, and again, try to maintain your loved one's daily routines. So, for example, if I was going to take my mom to visit some family members and we're going to travel by car, we would leave early, at the start of her day, and I'd make sure that we were wherever we're going to be before it gets too late, and before she's going to start to really wear down. So I would try to keep her daily routine as close to the same as possible. And again, you want to prepare your friends and relatives who might be traveling with you or who you might be traveling to go see, to let them know that it might take you longer to get there, or may need some special arrangements made in advance of your arrival. If you're going to be staying in a hotel, or even if you've got plans at a restaurant, uh, you could advise the service and hospitality staff if you have special requirements. You'll find that having those conversations with hospitality staff can be very helpful. They deal with situations like this all the time, um, and you know, getting them to help you plan things out can reduce your stress level and make things more simple and enjoyable for your loved one. And obviously, as I said, you know, allow for extra time. Things are going to take longer. You're going to need to move a little more slowly, and and that's okay. Just plan for it so it doesn't create extra stress for you. So now, gift giving. Hang on, I'm going to take a look here. I'm seeing questions in the chat. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, no. All right. So, adapting your gift giving. You want to encourage useful gifts, things that were maybe not great gifts in the past, might be great now. So, for example, I just recently gave my mom a sweatshirt um, that was from her college, and she loved it. She loved it. It reminded her of when she was in school, and she was very academically gifted, and so I think it probably reminded her of uh, how well she did, and some really good times. But she loved it. Uh, I've given her puzzle books, find a word books. She likes those. She doesn't use them as often as I'd like her to, but she has used them and she likes them. So, those wouldn't have been particularly good gifts, 20 years ago. But for her now, if she finds them very enjoyable. You want to make sure that you also warn your, friends and family about unsafe gifts or difficult gifts that are going to just, frustrate or confuse your loved one. Certainly, if your loved one was a handyman back in the day, or handy woman, dangerous tools are off limits now. Or maybe certain electronics that are going to be difficult for him or her to manage. That's going to be off limits. For example, my mother has a hard time now managing her phone, and so we spend a lot of time making sure that she knows how to get to the apps that she wants to get to and things like that. But that's only possible because she's very familiar with that device. But something new would be very difficult. Pets require a lot of care, and dogs need to be walked. Cat boxes need to be cleaned and they need to be fed. And so there are aspects of taking care of pets that are just no longer possible for certain people with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. So that may not be a good gift for a family member anymore. And again, we keep coming back to this one theme, don't neglect your own needs. Remember that you can't be your best unless you take care of yourself. And then one of the other things to think about, in terms of gifts, you might also think about, um, uh, giving them useful, practical gifts, such as identification bracelets, like the kind that you might get through Medic Alert, or there's an Alzheimer's Association product called Safe Return. Those might be practical gifts that you could give to a loved one. Or there was the sweatshirt idea that I had, so easy to remove clothing might be a good gift, or music, uh, through whatever um, medium, whether it's CDs, digital music, whatever the person usually uses to listen to music, uh, videos, whatever it is. Photo albums with photos of friends would be a great gift. Uh, and the other thing that I know my mother enjoys is being involved in giving gifts. She really likes to figure out gifts for family members. And so, we have a lot of fun when we, are going shopping and she gets to kind of figure out who gets what. So involving them can be important as well. So now, if your loved one is in a care facility, and that's where the holidays are going to be, you might want to talk to staff to help you figure out what would be the best way to enjoy the holidays in a care facility. Remember, they're probably going to be making plans as well for other members of that community. So uh, it's important to chat with them and figure out what they're going to do and to see how you might combine that with your own holiday plans. And remember that, high activity level of the holidays can cause more stress, whereas normal routines that provide a sense of security are going to be disrupted and will cause stress for loved ones. So the easiest way to address that is to check in with staff, figure out what's going on, in their community, and try to fit into the routine that's being set up and that's ongoing in the care facilities. So one of the things that I've seen is that, my mother's day is very routine. Her medication, her meals, her entertainment, it's all very routine. And so sometimes she complains about it because she wants to do something and it's a little difficult for her to do it. But I know she's happy and healthy and safe. And part of it is because she's just in this routine and things aren't roadblocks for her on a daily basis. You might also consider, if your loved one is at a care facility, celebrating the holidays at that facility, if that's something that works for your family. It isn't something that would work for, my family, because my family is fairly close to where my mother lives, so it's easy enough to pick her up and to go to where my family is celebrating the holiday. But that may not be the case for everybody. So if it makes more sense to stay in the care facility with the loved one, then do that. Give yourself the flexibility to let that be part of the new normal. And then as family members come by, have them come by in small groups rather than one big group. I guarantee that it'll be less disruptive for your loved one, and it'll probably be more enjoyable because it'll ensure that they have small visits with small groups over the course of the holiday season or a particular day. And I'm betting that will be really enjoyable as opposed to one big busy visit with a lot of people. And also remember, planning a smaller gathering, early in the day can make the day more successful because, folks with these problems tend to wear down. So events later in the day can be more challenging. And then remember, this is important, if you're going to take someone out of the care facility to celebrate in some way, have a backup plan. Restaurants close early. Some places are closed that you thought were going to be open. And so what I find is that it's always important to do a little planning and to make sure that I've got a backup plan when we head out of the facility. Okay, so holidays can be difficult. So how are we going to make it to January 2nd? Manage your expectations. Remember, you're not a super person. You can only do what you can do. So you'll just have to do the best you can to make the holidays as enjoyable for yourself as you can and for your family member. The key is that they are happy and healthy and safe. And so as long as you manage that, you've done a good job for your family member. Don't expect family dynamics to change. Some things don't change. That family member who doesn't vote the way you like, you want them to vote, or doesn't think the way you think, they voice their opinions too loud, they're still going to be at the family dinner, and that's okay. Don't expect those things to change. Just, it's important to just remember, integrate some of the things that we talked about so that we can make the family environment a little bit more conducive to a good, healthy environment for our loved ones. Be sensitive to the needs of your loved one, as we talked about. They may need a little bit more quiet. They may need to bow out of the holiday event a little earlier than usual. Whatever it is, just want to be mindful of what they may need. And, for that reason, you may need to balance solitude with sociability. As I said, for my mother, she can be very social for a smaller amount of time, but then at a certain point, the buzzer goes off, and I can see, looking at her, that she's ready to go. And so, a little earlier than we used to, I'll take her, we'll say our goodbyes. Use your available resources. That could be family members, that could be local community resources, whatever it is, to help support yourself so that you're not burned out. And again, let yourself off the hook. Give yourself a little grace. As I said, you can only do so much, and these can be difficult, stressful times for everybody. So, if your loved one is happy, healthy, safe, etc., then you've succeeded. So always keep that in mind. Things may not be perfect, but as long as you do the best you can and your family member is taken care of, it's all you can ask for. So holiday emotions, remember, there will be, some ups and downs during the holiday season. It's a time when family and friends, they look forward to coming together. But, holiday seasons can be sad or stressful. Towards the end, it can be a post-holiday letdown. So just remember, take a deep breath, plan ahead, and adjust your expectations. I like to think of it as giving yourself some grace. Um, Things don't have to be perfect. You have to just do the best you can, get help, have your family members participate, and everything will be just fine. And even though you have a family member that is dealing with Alzheimer's disease or some other kind of dementia, family celebrations can still be happy and memorable, and just great events. My mother, as I said, has been dealing with dementia for some years now, and she still has a great time when the family gets together. She's not as verbal as she used to be, and she doesn't remember everything the same way she used to, but she remembers enough and she's verbal enough that she has a great time, and everyone loves to see her. So it's not an end to fantastic holidays. So this was a quote, that I think is important, and I'll just read a little of this. People that live with dementia cannot always reflect on the past year or the year to come. The future is often difficult to face. However, as caregivers, we can treasure a few things. Our loved ones truly live in the moment. They enjoy what is happening right now. And that's what I think is important to remember. For them, the right now, the family that they're surrounded with, the meal that they're enjoying, um, the grandchildren that they're playing with at that moment, that's where they are. For example, when my mother and and I are at a family event, she doesn't really reflect on the fact that she doesn't get to live in her house anymore. Her house is right around the corner from the other family member's home where we, typically spend our holidays. She doesn't think about the fact that she used to live there anymore. She had a pet cat that she loved. She had a cat for almost 20 years. And when she went into the memory care community, she wasn't able to take the cat with her, which was fairly upsetting for her at the time. But what I've learned in this journey is that when people transition into those kinds of communities, they often forget some of the things that were a part of their life before. So, for example, that cat, I don't think she's ever mentioned that cat to me, uh, since she moved into her memory care community. So they live in the now. And so it's important to make that now as enriching and as loving, um, and as fulfilled as we can, and not to frustrate ourselves or them with the things that have been lost or the memories that aren't there anymore. So I think just try to remember that as we go into the remainder of the holiday season. It's not about being perfect. It's not about focusing on what we lost. It's about living in the now and enjoying the loved one that we have at the moment. If you need help, the Alzheimer's Association is there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The helpline number 800-272-3900. You can call that number, and there is master's level support available for you at any time, day or night, to help you with information and planning ideas and all sorts of things. The Alzheimer's Association is available for you if you just reach out, and here are some different ways that you can get help. alz.org is where you'll find these resources, and particularly alz.org/find us over here is a route to support groups and educational programs and other options that are available to you in communities nationwide. I point this out because that's a great resource if you are traveling during the holidays and you're in a different city. alz.org/find us can give you some real assistance. There are a number of ways to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association. You can volunteer in ways like I'm doing as a community educator, or you can also help volunteer to participate in two of the fundraising efforts. The Walk to End Alzheimer is one way, and then the Longest Day is another fundraising opportunity that takes place in the summer. You could assist with that. And then advocacy is also a big part of what volunteers do. And, you can be, there are opportunities to advocate locally in your local community, as well as the advocacy that takes place in Washington. So if there is any interest in volunteering with the association, please feel free to reach out to any of the local chapters or the Alzheimer's staff member that's on right now. Okay, so we're at the end of the presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
It looks like nobody had any questions in the Q&A. So if anybody has questions, right now is the moment to go ahead and type them in there. If you wanted to speak, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute you. There we go. All right, Catherine.
She's still muted, Sochi.
Sorry, I didn't see the. I'm sorry, I didn't see the
worries.
audio. How does it work? I like particularly the last few tips on like if we're traveling. But what if we're traveling internationally? Any tips for that?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying. It's going to depend on your loved one's level of function. Um, Traveling internationally is very tiring. And so I think what I would try to do is to mirror as best I could, their normal routine. So, for example, if if you're switching time zones, but you could travel in a way that traveled in the evening and ended in the morning, so that they slept through the bulk of the travel. That might be a good way to try to mimic their normal routine. Um, and it gets difficult traveling internationally. Because you don't have an opportunity to lay over. You're traveling to Rome and you're stopping in London. It's difficult to leave the airport and go to a hotel in London.
Yeah.
But if those opportunities for overnight layovers were there, that might be another way to lessen the effect of the long travel. But I think my biggest suggestion would be, if you could travel either during the night so that the person could sleep, or during the day when the person would normally be up. Those would be the two things that I might try, just to keep them in as close to a normal routine as you could.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I think in addition, just addition to the routine piece, which is super important, the timing, I think also as many comfort pieces for them as possible, whether it's, their food that they like, or the clothing that they're comfortable in, or the little fidget toys that they enjoy, whatever part of their life sort of keeps them happiest, you're gonna want to just inject into the travel piece already, because it's going to feel really disorienting to them. It is going to, just like everyone gets jet lagged normally,
Yeah.
it's going to have multiple layers of confusion, unfortunately, for someone with dementia, because of just the disorientation of where are they even going, and what are they doing, and, why are they on this plane, and, why does everything feel off? So it is gonna have some additional challenges. So just building in as much foundational pieces as you can.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
I
I
know
appreciate it. Thank you.
I know one of the things that I've learned is that, you know, the things that my mom loses track of in the moment. So to Savannah's point, we might be going somewhere, and I may just ask her, it's like, "Hey mom, do you know where we're going?" Just to kind of check in, and and I'll find that she might say, I really don't know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'll just tell her, "Oh, remember we're going to see, Dr. Smith about the blah blah blah," and she'll remember. And that's that. And so, you know, there may be times where you have those little moments of confusion, and it'll just be important to have some, a nice reassuring conversation to help them stay on track. As someone pointed out in the chat, they made an important point that it might be good to have two family members uh, traveling with the person, so that one caregiver has backup, need to go
yeah.
to the restroom or something like that. So those would be the tips I think that
Okay.
we would offer.
Yeah, I think
Thank
that's a great idea, whoever put that in the chat, to have someone else if possible, just because, as the person pointed out, right, there's the logistical pieces, the luggage, the tickets, the making sure everyone's on time, and then there's sort of the personal needs piece for the individual who has dementia. And so if you can, obviously it's not always possible. I think that if you are traveling alone and they are prone to wandering, which individuals with dementia, there's always a risk. Even if you think your loved one isn't at risk, it's always a possibility. So there really is the need to think through all those pieces to make sure you have eyes on them at all times. Make sure that airplane staff knows, make sure the, sort of airport pieces are really taken care of and thought through in a much more intentional way, because it really is super important. So just a note on that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think we have another question. Jacqueline said in the chat, she said, any tips for patients who are both bedridden and deaf? So specifically for the holidays.
That was bedridden and deaf.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what we were saying about, you know, about individuals' levels of function. Um, someone who is bedridden, that would be somebody who I would think that when we spoke about small numbers of family members and guests visiting the person, as opposed to big groups, that would be somebody that I think would benefit from that approach. Just small numbers of people coming in and saying hello and greeting their loved one, and then spending a little bit of time and then shuttling out so that the person's not overwhelmed and getting overtired. And so, you know, I think that this is what we were saying when we were thinking about, sort of you've got to tailor the holidays for everybody's level of function. So I think small groups coming in so that the person knows that they're involved in the holiday and people are there and they care. But I think small numbers of people, limited amounts of time would probably be the best way to not have your loved one be overtired, overstimulated, and maybe confused by what's going on.
And similarly, I think, I think that's a great idea to minimize the amount of people. And as you mentioned, Mike, in the presentation, having everyone understand the restrictions of the individual if they have dementia and they're hard of hearing and they're bedridden, right? Like, as much as you can, sort of giving the family members an understanding of, that if they're talking, they may not hear you, and what would be the suggested thing? Would it be, raising your voice a little bit? Would it be being closer to them? Would it be they need to put on some special type of equipment? What's going on with that individual, because there are multiple levels of need, right? And so you can communicate that as the caregiver to the individuals who are having that visitation, so that it becomes, sort of a mutually beneficial visit. And if there's not those traditional communication pieces, right, of because sometimes there isn't about the verbal communication, right? Could there be other ways to interact with the loved one, through those visual cueing pieces, because that's the main sense that you're working with. Or there could be other things, right? Touch or smell or taste, right? So just thinking through those pieces, since there's limited the cognition and the hearing pieces are impaired. So just yeah, I think that is great idea though, Mike, in terms of the minimization of people coming through. Let's see. Amy has some great tips on travel. So you should definitely read through those in the chat. Any other questions?
Savannah, there was somebody in the chat that commented that they're willing to volunteer. Do you guys want to share that information again? Maybe put it up.
Sure.
Or...
I can also put into the chat, how to look up how to volunteer. I actually don't know if I'm able to, Sochi. But if you put alz.org/volunteer, that is our volunteer portal. And they can assess all the different volunteer positions that we have. As Mike went over, it's quite extensive. Mike is a community educator, but there's, a lot of different types of positions, whether it's, being at health fairs for us or running a support group. We have volunteers who help us plan our walk to end Alzheimer's, or doing a creative fundraiser like the longest day. So and advocacy, I can't forget advocacy. We do a lot of work around advocacy. So lots of spaces to get involved in. So that alz.org/volunteer is where you can sort of see all the different options and opportunities to get involved. So,
you should plug it into the chat now. Sorry.
And I will say that
okay.
The association is great with its volunteers. There's great training, and the staff staff that you work with are just amazing. They'll set you up for all kinds of really enriching opportunities. So if you're interested in volunteering, I love it. So I hope you do get involved with volunteering because it's great.
Thank you, Mike, for the plug. I can't plug like Mike can, but he is a volunteer, so she is as well. So I'm really grateful to all the volunteers. We do try to treat them like our partners because we just need more of us doing this work and getting out the information that we have. So we're very grateful to our volunteers and that we're able to do this kind of work. And I know we're 5 minutes over, but if there are any other questions, I'm going to put my information in the chat, my email and my direct phone number. If you have, any questions or you want to get involved with anything, that's another way you can reach me. I am the program manager for the San Fernando Valley. And if you are living in a different part of Los Angeles or a different part of the world, we can always get you connected to the chapter nationwide that you're in. So I look forward to hearing from any of you, and thank you to Mike, thank you to Sochi and Lisa's Care Connection for the opportunity to share this really valuable information.
Of course, and thank you, Savannah, thank you, Mike, and thank you to Alzheimer's Association for co-joining with us and making this possible. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.